Good afternoon and welcome along to NUFC Matters with all the fans from around the world. We have a show like this every week. Slightly different time today just because we're going to be going live tomorrow, of course, for Newcastle's next Premier League game against Brighton. So thanks for coming on, lads. Thanks for jumping on at short notice. And I'm going to start off with what I've just heard on Soccer Saturday as I was coming back from the gym today. Paul Merson has claimed that he feels Newcastle United will win a cup this season. Either the League Cup or the FA Cup. He didn't stipulate which one, but Chris, it's quite a remarkable turnaround from somebody who's one of Newcastle's biggest critics in the world of punditry.
Yeah, I think this must be like Back to the Future. He must have gone to sleep and woken up in 1955. You know, I mean, 1955. You know, Newcastle was on its third FA Cup, and things were looking good for the next half century, and then total not since 1968, 69. So maybe he's seen into the future, or maybe he's got a crystal ball. But I usually go with whatever Merson says. Pick the opposite.
Yeah, me too. Nathan, it's a strange one from Paul Merson, but he was sitting there on the panel. Jeff started talking about Newcastle. They were waxing lyrical about Steve Bruce as they normally do, and Andy Carroll, and Tony Poulos is on there. And then they came to Paul Merson, and you could have knocked me down with a feather when he turned around and said Newcastle to win the cup.
Yeah, I think he's one of those that, like, classically is always against us, isn't he? He's one of those pundits who he'll always put us down for a defeat or a draw if it's against somebody that we should be beating. So yeah, as I was saying to you guys before we came on, I think they should send someone around his Alcoholics Anonymous sponsor to check on him, because I think he's probably back off the wagon, isn't he? If he's predicting that we're going to win anything. But yeah, that's like how they seem to go with us, isn't it? Like under Rafa, they probably would have never backed us for that, but under Bruce, now he's won a couple of games. He's the best thing since sliced bread, isn't he, Steve Bruce? So yeah, I guess it's surprising in a way, but then it doesn't surprise me. It seems like it's a way to sort of wind us fans up about Bruce at the moment, probably.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, Adam. I mean, it's a strange one. You know, he is one of our biggest critics, Paul Merson, at the best of times, and be interesting to see whether he's predicted Newcastle to win in the Super Six or whatever it is today. But what's your take on Paul Merson predicting Newcastle United to win a cup this season?
Well, I've been sitting here for the last 2 or 3 minutes trying to think of the logic behind it. So let's assume for a second that his thinking is, well, they've got a better squad this season, so they're going to be safe of relegation. Bruce always says he wants to have a go in the cups. He's got a bigger squad this year. They've got a relatively easy game next Wednesday, you would think, against the League Two team. I think they've got lower league opposition lined up in the next round already, albeit away. So maybe he's just thinking, you know what, the race for the top four is going to be so strong that these big clubs aren't going to be worried about the Carabao Cup. Maybe Newcastle are in that, 10 to 15 range in the league, so they're not particularly worried about relegation. So instead they can focus on the Carabao Cup. And let's face it, we would all be over the moon if we got to the final of the Carabao Cup, even though it's essentially a worthless tournament to be in. Any trip to Wembley would do for us. So maybe that's the logic, but it is a bit bizarre. And again, he's usually just the antagonist in these conversations. So we'll see. Fingers crossed he's right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not disagreeing with him, Spenny, but Paul Merson predicting Newcastle United to win a cup really came from, a far out place, I think. What's your view on what he had to say today?
I didn't say it. I usually turn it off when he's talking, because he talks a lot of crap.
Yeah, true, mate.
But if he thinks we're going to win the cup, I still don't believe him, but we'll never know. Hope we do.
Andre, your view?
I've noticed that generally Steve Bruce is very well liked by his peers, by his generation of fellow footballers. Like, he has great support from the likes of Alan Shearer, Peter Beardsley, with whom we've discussed about Steve Bruce, and I think that he has this support by the fellow British pundits, and they want him to do well. And if you remember last year, like everybody turning on Rafa and telling how much of a great work Bruce is doing, I don't think that they have a very biased view on him, and I think that this is somehow showing now that Newcastle made a couple of good transfers, and like what Adam mentioned, basically the logic probably is that they'll be safe and we can have a great run in the cups. But I think it comes from the fact that generally he's a very well liked in the public life among the pundits, and they want him to do well. Like he really has a great reputation among his fellow generation of colleagues.
Yeah. Okay, Daz, what's your take on it, mate?
Yeah, I think Sky really missed a trick when they were going with their clear out, and they could have got rid of Merson as well. But no, I'm seeing the logic that Adam is applying as well. And look, if we got past Blackburn, Morecambe looks doable as well, and then it's just to get past Newport or Troy Deeney's Watford. You can see some logic there that in the League Cup that we may get to later stages, but it's a bit too soon for that yet. We're only played well in one game, so hold your horses, Merson.
It might not be. When Matt says that we're going to win a cup, then I'll believe it.
I was just going to say it might not be Troy Deeney's Watford if Nathan has his way. Martin, good afternoon. Paul Merson has just predicted Newcastle United are going to win a cup this season. What do you think about that?
I wish I had his confidence, but I mean, we've got to take a cup seriously. Listening to obviously what the lads are saying there, like there seems to be this media love-in for Bruce, but we've won 2. Hopefully, 3rd win tomorrow. We seem to have a fairly decent line in the cup so far. We will meet a bigger team somewhere, but there's a good few of them drawing each other in the next round. So, hopefully we can do something. I mean, it'd be great to see something before I hit 51. Absolutely.
No, it'd be fantastic. I'm not saying I disagree with Paul Merson either. To be honest, if you get the right run in the League Cup, I've got to agree with the lads as well. Ultimately, it comes down to who you get drawn against, and so far the draw's been kind. The next round, if we do happen to get in to that next round, worst case scenario, you're going to play Watford away. We could still progress. So you could be in the quarterfinals, by October, and then it's anybody's. I do want to touch on this one. I've just seen a comment which flashed up on the screen there before. Let's discuss this. George Kevin Atkinson Lott says Brucey's done better than Rafa. Pardew did better than Rafa. Let's be real. Now, interesting. We all have opinions. Chris, what's your take on that? Steve Bruce. First season in charge, he managed to keep us in the Premier League. He got us to the quarterfinal of the FA Cup, albeit a surrender in the quarterfinal. What's your take on what he said? Is Steve Bruce, or has he done better than Rafa? And has Pardew done better than Rafa?
I don't think it's come down to more than just record. You can't just say what's Steve Bruce's winning percentage. I think you need to look how he's organized the team, and I just don't have the confidence in Bruce. I think what I was going to say is that that Steve Bruce gets a bit of a hometown, home country discount, and that it seems like English managers are just more easily embraced especially by the media, because the media is, like we said before, is involved with a lot of former players, and so there's kind of like a longer leash that Bruce has gotten, and Rafa, who I completely believe is a world-class manager, Steve Bruce is not, always got the sort of tag as like, oh, he's being difficult with management, or he only wants his way, or he'll go out, something like that. So I thought we were done mercifully with the Rafa comparisons at the end of last season in terms of could Steve Bruce get more points, and I should have seen that 2 games in the season he'd already be getting comparisons again, but I'm having none of it.
Yeah, Nathan, it's a strange one. I've already seen 1 or 2 people in the media mention Rafa's name again. I hope we haven't got to go through a full season of this comparison. It's done. It's dusted. Rafa's long gone. He's into his 2nd season in China. But let's talk about Steve Bruce. Has he done better than Rafa? And did Pardew do better than Rafa? I know Pardew got his European football?
Yeah, I think one thing to be careful of is that, particularly with a lot of the media outlets, particularly Sky Sports, and the notion that Bruce is doing better than Rafa is very convenient for this narrative that this long running narrative that they've got, that we're kind of we're all for Rafa and we won't like anyone else apart from Rafa, and it's a really convenient like stat for them to see us winning to the first two games, and it's a really convenient stat for them to sort of leverage against us to make the people that we're real, because we've all been involved in the club for a long time, and we know what Rafa brought to the team. He brought a bit of hope where there wasn't any, and he brought organisation and he brought passion where we were devoid of it for seasons and seasons before then. So obviously we've got an affinity with that, and for us it's not necessarily about winning every game. It's about having that hope and having that hope that one day things can be better for us. So I think the notion that Bruce is doing well is something that they can kind of conveniently leverage against us. And then when he wasn't doing so well at the end of last season, it's like, oh well, you need to move on from Rafa now. You need to move on from all the things that came before. I think what's very telling is something we've discussed on the show previously, is that back when Pardew was doing well, he was buying strikers whenever he wanted to buy them. He had Demba Ba, Cisse, Loic Remy was brought in when he needed him, that kind of thing. They didn't end up buying Loic Remy, but we had a really good team at that point, and a lot of money was spent on that team. Perhaps, and if you look at the other managers that have had vast amounts of money sort of furnished upon them, it's been McLaren, and I think Bruce has probably overtaken him recently. I would imagine, with the amount that they've been spending on him. I called this out like quite a few weeks back. I think that for Mark Ashley it was a personality thing, and the fact that Rafa wasn't willing to sort of lie down and take it was the reason why he didn't get ultimately the money that he wanted to be spent. Because I don't think these managers that we've had, such as like Pardew and Pardew wasn't really in control of the transfers. Ultimately, it was like led by Graham Carr mainly, wasn't it? I think Bruce won't have that much of a hand in the final say of who comes into the club. So it's always a case of what could have been with Rafa if they'd have spent that money on him. I think it's difficult to compare the teams that Rafa had compared to the teams that Bruce has got. Even the team now that Bruce has gotten added to is streets ahead of the team that Rafa had to work with over the seasons that he was in charge. And you can't even compare it to the team of the Pardew era, because that was a real team. And you think with a manager like Rafa, they could have really gone places and would have doubled down on that progress that we made under the seasons that Pardew was in charge. So I don't think it's you can't make that comparison. It's like comparing a Premiership team or a Premiership squad to like a Championship squad that Rafa was managing, and the fact that he managed to keep us in the league and bring us back up and keep us in the league is, it's chalk and cheese, isn't it? I think.
Of course it is. Yeah, good points, well made. Adam, your take on Brucey? Has he done better than Rafa? Did Pardew do better than Rafa?
Well, I mean, again, I think it is a pointless comparison now. I understand why fans do it because Rafa was so popular, but in reality, what we need to talk about is like Bruce's first season versus Bruce's second season, right? So in Bruce's first season, to his credit, he was thrown in with 3 weeks notice, with a very unhappy fan base, probably a pretty unhappy team at the time. He didn't have any control over the transfers. They were pretty good transfers as they turned out, other than Joe Linton, which we won't talk about yet. So I think Bruce 2.0 is going to be really interesting now, right? Because he wanted these players, these 5 players they've signed. They were his names. I know he wasn't involved directly in the transfers, but they were players that he wanted. So this is a Bruce team now, whereas last year really wasn't a Bruce team. It was really still a Rafa team with a few additions. So I think Bruce this year versus Bruce last year is what we need to compare, particularly the football we play. Even if we finish in the same position in that nowhere land of 11th to 15th or whatever it is, like what's the football going to be like? And based on last weekend, I'm pretty excited about what the football might be like. In terms of Pardew, he had a really attacking team. To Nathan's point, we were terrible at the back during Pardew's years. I mean, we had Colaccini, we had Enrique for a while. Stephen Taylor played about 500 games under Pardew. Mike Williamson played about 500 games. I can't even remember who our right back was. Doesn't even matter. But I guess doesn't even matter. But we were terrible at the back, but we were extremely good going forward with Ben Arthur and Cisse and all of those guys. Danny Simpson, thank you, Andre, another completely pointless person. So you know, we had a totally different team back then. It was all attacking, no defending. No one ever told anyone that Alan Pardew defended too much, whereas Rafa was the exact opposite, right? We were absolutely terrible going forward, but we had a great backline, both in the Championship and ultimately in the Premier League. So, you know, it's a bad comparison now. What we really need to be talking about is Bruce this year versus Bruce last year. At least that's my opinion. And again, he's got the players he wanted last weekend. He got the performance he wanted. He's got to keep that up now. He's got to come out with that same team, I think, tomorrow. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But yeah, so the comparison's a bit foolish in my opinion.
Andre, I'm going to come to you because you were laughing there as Adam was making some comments. I'd like to come to you while whatever you had was fresh in your mind.
No, I first of all, I agree that it's a totally pointless exercise to keep comparing Bruce and Rafa for like second year in a row. But we have to keep in mind that, you know, the expectations are very different. Like the bar, just by the name Rafa Benitez and what he achieved in the game, the expectations were very high. So probably when Newcastle was finishing 10th or 13th, they could have been subject to, okay, Rafa didn't achieve what, his CV stands for. With Bruce, the expectations were very low. So basically last year's even 10th, 11th, at the end we finished 13th, but it was considered as a great achievement. So they always have these two different CVs or backgrounds. And for Bruce, it's much easier to overachieve versus his past, versus his resume, in comparison to Rafa, who's the Champions League winner. I don't think that someone can argue who's the better manager, because, you know, Rafa has proven himself. He's in many countries. He has titles, and we all know that he's a football fanatic, very much into detail, and the guy is really, really top level in the sport. I would love if Bruce surpasses Rafa in terms of achievements in Newcastle, if he can deliver this cup that we mentioned. But until now, I don't think that Bruce has done more than Rafa. Basically, Adam said it very well. Last year, he achieved 13th with Rafa's squad, basically upgraded with 2-3 good players, I would say. Pardew, on paper, Pardew achieved the most out of the three, because Pardew reached the 5th position and he was very, very close to Champions League. Basically, Pardew's year is Mike Ashley's highlight for the 13 years in Newcastle. But I think that this was really an outlier. Like, it was a really lucky summer in terms of transfers. Like, Graham Carr really struck very lucky with Hatem Ben Arfa on free from Marseille, or for a very small fee after his horrific injury when he was on loan in Newcastle. Kabay was a great coup, and a couple of additions like Dembaba came on a free. And Pardew really struck lucky for 1 year. But Pardew proved during his 5th year spell as a manager that he couldn't sustain it. It was really a one-off. I would say more of an effort by the players, and rather than work by Pardew behind. Because the real Pardew work showed the following season when we finished 16th, basically, which is the lowest finish of Newcastle in the Premier League without the relegation season. So I would say Rafa is still the best manager we've had since Bobby Robson, but it's a matter of what could have been rather than what happened for the 3 years he was in charge.
Mm-hmm. Good points. Okay, Spenny, obviously the question that we had from George was quite simple. His statement, really. He said that Bruce has done better than Rafa, and Pardew did better than Rafa. What's your take on that?
In the word, no.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. He's the best manager since we had Bobby Robson.
Yeah, Rafa was.
He stuck with us when we went relegated, been a world-class manager, got in the Championship, got us promoted, had more money to go out with compared to Bruce and Pardew, kept us up 2 seasons in a row with no money again. Crying out for strikers, got one on loan, no one rated him, and changed him, Rondon, into a striker, a proper striker, which we should have kept. Simple as that.
Good stuff. I like Spenny's always
change our club. He had the potential to change our club, and he would have, if he was still here now, we could be right at the top of that table if the money was there for him to spend.
Exactly. I can't argue with you, Spenny. And I always like it. You're always short but concise, but you're always to the point, mate. And you're right with that 100%. Everton 5, West Brom 2. West Brom did get off to a really good start, pulled it back at half time, but it's 5-2 to Everton now. West Brom, of course, down to 10 men and also have their manager sent off. Going to be a long hold season for the Baggies, I think. Welcome to Pete. We'll come to you in a minute, Pete. Martin. Over to you, mate. Your views on George's comment, which has certainly got us all thinking and talking.
Stirring the pot, yeah. I agree with Nathan. To be fair, I think with Bruce, there seems to be there is this narrative and a love. And if you look at last season, I'm sure maybe Spenny might drop on the back of this one, but we 2 wins out of 18, and the stats were just glossed over. And I think we mentioned it a few times when we spoke about it last season. The games, Bruce's B plan and him as a manager were just simply not good enough. We weren't winning. We weren't set up. We weren't drawing. We were losing. Simply, that was the fact. I think, this season will be interesting. He seems that if we can get the football played that we get against West Ham, then I think that we could do okay. But will we get that all season long? I don't know. So I think there's obviously something there between Bruce as a person and Ashley, because obviously certain things are changing or have changed with regards to players coming in. If Bruce gets the players that he did, then look, let's kick on. But season 2 needs to be a lot better. I think from Rafa's perspective, yeah, I hear what the lads are saying. He stuck with us when we went down, brought us back up. But I think from Ashley's perspective, that again for me was just an asset survival, and he knew that Rafa was his best chance of getting us straight back up and back into the money. I think if that had been, somebody else, we probably wouldn't have come back up, and Ashley may have maybe sold and be gone. We just won't know. Pardew, I think, had the team. When we had that, Demba Ba and Cisse, it was an unbelievable partnership. We had everything we needed to go from that European season and move on. And again, Ashley just didn't double down on it. He just let things drop away again. So I think season 2 for Bruce will be good. I think I agree with Spenny. I think Rafa was probably the best manager we've had since Robson. And I think Bruce just has this narrative of ex-colleagues and Sky pundits that seem to revere him, whatever he does. So I think this season will be a tester.
Yeah, I agree, Martin, as well.
Going back to Pardew as well, Steve. Anybody went to the games when Pardew was there, he used to play players out of position all over. He used to play the right back as a left back and left back as a right winger. He was clueless, him.
Yeah, and probably one of the few managers in history at Newcastle United who actually had a levelled campaign at him. I remember Newcastle fans singing Jack Charlton out of the club, of course, in 1985. Yeah. I'm old enough to remember that. But that Pardew campaign was an internet campaign, and it grew and grew and grew. And, Sam Allardyce probably as well. The fans turned on him, turning around singing, "You don't know what you're doing." But, yeah, I mean, Pardew... When Pardew was good, he was good. But when he was awful, he was bloody awful. Daz, your take on this?
Yeah, just picking up what something Martin said, actually. It's okay. If we had a choice tomorrow, we needed a manager tomorrow. It's Rafa, Bruce, Pardew for me, of those 3. But it's also about working with the owner. Pardew was a total yes man. He did what he was told. Rafa the complete opposite, and stuck it to the owner. Bruce is getting the best out of Ashley. Okay, there's going to be things going on behind the scenes, but he's getting the wages have increased, as in for the players, and we're signing players that are over 27 in the shape of Callum Wilson. But I think just in relation to Bruce, I think we're all, well, maybe it's just me, I'm getting a bit brainwashed on the Bruce factor now. When he's joined us first, I was totally demoralized, but he's growing on me. But if we had a choice, it's Rafa all day long.
Okay, Pete, good afternoon, mate. Your take on George's rather, as I think Martin described it as a stir the pot comment, but it's a good one. It's got we're talking. Bruce, came in with no expectations, and obviously came in with the backing of the owner. Rafa left after, basically spending 3 years on Tyneside battling the owner, but still managing to, do well. What, has Bruce, eclipsed what Rafa did, and, did Pardew do that?
In a word, no. Bruce hasn't done that. Certainly not yet. We can't argue the fact that Bruce came into very difficult, surroundings and an environment at the time, 2 weeks before the start of the season, and he's managed to keep us up, well enough, and got one or two players that weren't playing well under Rafa Benitez playing. So fair play to that. But to have him above Rafa Benitez in terms of his ability as a manager and performance at the club, no way. Rafa Benitez has performed miracles under a shoestring budget at times, particularly in the Premier League. He got a decent budget in the Championship, but Mike Ashley had to give him that in order for Rafa Benitez to stay, one, and two, to be able to compete and actually be in a position to win or certainly get automatic promotion. In the Premier League seasons, Rafa had hardly anything to play on. And in fact, I think within those couple of seasons, we were sort of like in profit in terms of how much he was given and how much he had in terms of to spend. So there's no comparison there. Yes, the football wasn't great. It wasn't entertaining, but he was compact, as he likes to say. He had a structure, he had a way of playing, and actually he got the players playing to their strengths, really. We'd always start the season quite slow, we'd always finish strong, and Rafa Benitez has always built a team. Even the Liverpool, the Valencias have been built to play that way. So for me, I'd take Rafa over Bruce all day long. That's not to say Bruce hasn't done a great job. He's done okay, but to have him, Bruce and Rafa in the same sort of argument is crazy in my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of support for Rafa, which isn't surprising. But look, people are making some great points. It's one of those issues which will never go away. Blue Moon Boy says Bruce man management is underrated. Less disharmony in the squad since he joined. For example, Hayden's U-turn and managing us, the unrest caused by the public play out of the takeover. So very supportive of Steve Bruce there. Funko Freddy makes another good point, but Rafa was highest paid manager out of the three of them. So do you give a manager a lot of money? Signings with less football, managing knowledge, more knowledge, less signings. Lots of good points coming in here, and I suppose it's it's one which will always run and run. But for me, Rafa Benitez's history. We've moved on. Steve Bruce is the manager. We've got to support the manager. And me personally, I wasn't keen on him. He was 11th choice, not 100th choice, as somebody suggested there. He was 11th choice. I believe that Steve Bruce was the one who contacted the club, or his agent, or whoever it was, contacted the club whilst he was under contract at another club, and offered his services. So he wasn't probably even on the list, which makes it even more of a strange appointment. But he's come in, he's done his best. I just wish he'd be a little bit more honest about maybe his allegiances. I don't think he's a Newcastle fan. I know he's born in the Northeast. I know his dad was a Newcastle fan, but I still don't believe that he was a Newcastle fan. And apart from that, I'm not going to hold it against him. He kept us in the Premier League, got us to the quarterfinal of a cup, and so far so good this season. I wish him all the best, and I hope he does well. So let's see what happens. Got about 20 minutes left. Lots of comments coming in. I will go through a couple of these. Let's remember, lads, Sam Allardyce was number one choice to take over from Rafa, and he turned it down. Christ, as much as Bruce isn't my choice, I'll have him over Big Sam. Good point, Mark. George says, would all rather Rafa. However, Bruce did amazing in the circumstances. I felt Rafa didn't so well as people expected when he was at the club in the Premiership. I was speaking of the Premiership campaigns. George, it was a great question to put on, man. It certainly got us plenty of debate. I hope you can continue to tune in and provide us with a few of those gems. Mark says, if Rafa had the money to spend instead of none, we would have been in a better position. Nobody's having a go or on Steve Bruce's back right now, so I don't know why we are having this conversation. Totally agree, Pete says. Mark, Martin has to dip out. His connection isn't good. We'll see him tomorrow for the live coverage of the Brighton game. Isn't Bruce the most unsuccessful manager in the Premier League history? He took so many clubs down. He must change style of play to win me over. Fair enough. From V for Vendetta. Okay, lads. Let's look at the team. Chris, Newcastle United. We've had a week now. We've won both games. Won both games and kept 2 clean sheets. We've seen the new signings in action, the likes of Wilson and Hendricks and Fraser and Gillespie. what's your take on the week that we've just witnessed as Newcastle fans?
I'm sort of wondering between the cup side and the league side, how we sort out our midfielders. I'd like to see Fraser get more of a run in the league side, and I'm not so sure that we should just continue to go with Hayden and Shelby, game in, game out. But it's unclear how you would have like Hendrick and Fraser together. What about Matty Long? What about Sean Longstaff? I feel like we need to. I'd like to see some experimenting with the. I mean, as much as you can within not sabotaging the team, but to kind of get a run of play for a bunch of the players in there and see if we can have a more dynamic midfield than Shelby and Hayden in the engine room. Because I want to see them stretch the defenses, really sort of play end to end, get Wilson and Andy some chances up front. But I sort of feel like we've got a glut of midfielders, and we need to sort of sort out what the best way forward is. And so while I would expect to see sort of the same squad as from West Ham, I want to see Fraser get more involved, and I just don't know how he sort of fits in with the lineup we've got now.
Yeah, fair enough. Nathan, your ideas on what's happened over the last week at Newcastle? 2 wins, 2 clean sheets into the next round of the Cup. It's a good week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's excellent. I think it's more than we probably hoped for. I think that first game of the season we were confident of getting some points, but I don't think we expected perhaps the performance that we got against West Ham. I think we were perhaps looking to. We knew that these players coming into the team would make a positive impact on the team, but I don't think we expected the style of play to be that much different from kind of how it was last season, which was really pleasing to see. Obviously, the game against Blackburn, it was kind of like a bit of a throwback to last season in that we were kind of getting swamped in the midfield and didn't really have complete control of the game like we seem to have at West Ham at times. I don't think there's any doubt that Fraser will probably start, I would think, maybe, unless he's going with a fully unchanged team from the West Ham game. I think you'd have to look at the way that they played against West Ham and you'd perhaps struggle to argue dropping any of those players, to be honest, because I don't think any of them put a foot wrong. Almiron was good midweek, but then again, I think the impact that Almiron had when he came on at West Ham was excellent, because I think when he starts a game, sometimes for me he kind of drifts in and out of the game and kind of takes a little while to get to grasp the sort of flow of the game and get involved and have any impact. But I think we saw that against Blackburn, but because he came on strong later on. But when he came on against West Ham, when he was full of running, they didn't know what to do with him at all, and it was that sort of when the game was drifting towards them a little bit. When he came on, it pulled it firmly back in our favour at that point, and he gave them a lot of trouble. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how they fit, because you'd think Fraser is in line to start, but then how does that fit with the rest of the team? You can't really drop Hendrick or Hayden or Shelby, because I think for Hayden and Shelby and Hendrick against West Ham, we had control of that midfield. Against Blackburn, it was really disappointing to see that Barlaser and Longstaff couldn't really get that same level of control, and we really lack that kind of punch and grit in the middle. I felt against Blackburn, and that's the team. It's a league lower than us. It should be a team that we're kind of we were running over in the midfield, but yeah, they struggled to get a grasp of it. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed in their performance in the midfield midweek, but for me, I'd be quite happy if we went unchanged this weekend.
Yeah, a lot of people suggesting Fraser would probably start on the bench again. Martin, of course, who joined us slightly earlier but had to dip out, says Fraser in for me on the right, Shelby off with Hendrick pushed in, Almiron as a 10 in behind Wilson, ASM on the left, same back four, but Gillespie in goal for the Brighton game. So thanks for that, Martin. We'll look forward to having you live on the show tomorrow. Adam, your views on a week which has seen us progress to the next round and beat West Ham away?
Yeah, I mean, let's all just take a second to think about the fact that we can now talk about having a league team and a cup team. That is a significant difference from the Newcastle that I'm used to over the last 10 years. So that's really important for me, because Bruce has now got this great selection issue that all managers need to have in their team, where he's got to think about, do I go 4-4-2 and be more direct like I did against West Ham? Or do I play with little speed on the wings with Fraser and Almiron? But that means probably taking Carroll out of the side. And I just think you can't do that. Carroll played so well against West Ham. That partnership with Wilson really genuinely gave us a threat, both in the channels, but also obviously over the top and having crosses put into the box by the wingers and the fullbacks. So I agree with Nathan. I don't think you can change that team from West Ham. I just don't think anyone deserves to be dropped. That's really harsh on Almiron and Fraser in particular. But, what a great option to have off the bench for the last 25, 30 minutes. If you need to change the game, if you need to go get a goal, if it's 0-0 or if we're 1-0 down, to have someone like Almiron and Ryan Fraser that just totally can change the complexity of the game, right? Because we won't have players like them on the pitch if we line up in a 4-4-2. So I think it's fantastic that Bruce has these options. I don't think you can change that midfield too. I don't think either of them deserve to be dropped. They're a really good partnership. The only thing that worries me in there at home is that there's sort of a lack of pace and a lack of flair in there. But having those four in front of them really gives us sort of the option to attack in different ways. So for me, it's got to be an unchanged team. And don't forget, we've got another game on Wednesday and then another game against Spurs, which right now looks really winnable, right? The way Spurs are playing, or at least something that we can get a point out of. So Bruce will be thinking about that. He's got an opportunity in the middle of the week to advance again in the cup. And I think he's got a number of players that will want to play in that game. I actually think in the cup on Wednesday will be really interesting. Does he go with Joe Linton up front again on his own? Or does he try and work in a combination in a 4-4-2? I think the only thing we haven't seen Joe Linton do is play in a 4-4-2 or not for very long. So it would be really interesting if he plays a 4-4-2, either with Wilson up front with Joe Linton. I think that could be very interesting, or a Carroll up front with Joe Linton. Might be too soon for Carroll to play another game off the back of playing tomorrow. But again, he's got lots of options, and I think we should just sort of appreciate that for now while we can. But for me, he goes 4-4-2 unchanged from last weekend, and we go for it again. No problem with that.
I think the good thing is that the cup games, because of the way that the format of the League Cup is, I think it means that a lot of players who generally might be sitting around for 2 or 3 weeks and just training and not getting any action are actually playing. So if an injury happens to somebody in the first team squad, if you like, they're going to be fit, they're going to be ready to go, they're going to have had match action. So
couldn't agree more.
The rehashing of this League Cup might actually benefit everybody. And I think once we get out of COVID, pray God that soon, that we could end up in a situation where, we keep the League Cup like that. I think it would be beneficial to do it in other countries. So fingers crossed. Pete, over to you, mate. First couple of games, happy? Unmute. You've done a spenny.
Sorry, my bad. I saw that actually from a spenny. I like that. His tag at the bottom. So for me, as Newcastle fans, I think we can't be anything but happy. We don't. I can't remember the last time beginning of the season we've gone back-to-back wins at the beginning of the season. So confidence is high. Confidence in the fan base is high. It's been a great start. For me, I wouldn't change anything. I've been quite surprised actually throughout the week. A lot of people have been saying about dropping Carroll. I thought he was a key component to the way in which we played, particularly going forward, because as a target man, I thought he occupied the two centre backs, which allowed Wilson to play in and behind and use his pace and ability to really stretch the defence. And I like that because it takes a lot of pressure off Wilson up top and it allows him to do and find those little gaps. So, like I said, I was really pleased with the way he played. And, unless there's a bad performance in there, I think it should be exactly the same start. For me, you've got Fraser and Almiron, particularly after Tuesday night, knocking on the door, and they should be definitely coming on and getting more minutes as subs. And then you've got Longstaff really as an option coming off the bench. He's going to want more minutes as well. And for me, that puts Joe Linton down the pecking order. Because from Tuesday night, you didn't offer anything, and you want players coming off the bench that you feel confident that are going to be able to change the game. And for me, he doesn't do that. So we've got options there on the bench, which is great to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we're going to play at home with the emphasis on us as an attacking team going at Brighton. Because it's been too often with teams in and around us and teams that we should be beating. I can go back to Norwich in January, for example, where we were expected to go out and turn them over. And we were effectively the away team, and they had a lot of the possession and dominated the game. We've got players now with the creativity in our team to be going out there and really imposing ourselves on the game. So that's what I'm interested to see on Sunday. I want to be seeing that from us. The way we did against West Ham, I want that to continue. Because I think we'll put a lot of teams on the back foot if we do that. As Adam said, with regards to Wednesday, the games are coming thick and fast. I think there'll be a lot of players. I wouldn't be surprised if Dummett starts. Bruce said he's not too far away. I think they'll probably save him for Wednesday night. I think Joe Linton will be a cup player moving forward. I think he'll play in all the cup games. And then you've got the Longstaffs potentially coming back. So it's great to have those options. It really is. But the main thing is about how we impose ourselves on Sunday against Brighton and really take the game to them. With the likes of Lallana and potentially Ben White being injured and out the game, that can only help us.
Yeah, Baz Doss says 35 million isn't going to change much. Soon we will lose and people will realise we're still way off the pace. I've always said, of course, you can get off to a good start, but you tend to judge a team on how they bounce back from their first defeat. I've always said that. And
Steve. Sorry to interrupt. What does it mean by off the pace? In what way? I'd be interested to know that, because I don't think anyone believes that we're going to be up there challenging for the Premier League title, top 4, or even Europe. But in terms of top half, or certainly top 10, losing one game won't put us off the pace. It's actually. It will show our mentality, how we respond to that. I think nobody here is under the impression that we're not going to go a season without losing the game or go 10 games unbeaten. We will get beaten. It's about how we come back from that. And I believe, in my opinion, the players that we've brought in will have the mentality breeding into this squad that we can hit back and be strong.
Baz Doss has said it sounds negative, but it's true. An injury in the wrong place, like a left back, striker, or a right back, and with the same side. I guess what Baz Doss is saying is essentially that without the strength and depth, we are pretty much going to struggle if we get an injury. And I mean, I was thinking about this yesterday when I was talking to Steve Hasty and Neil Mitchell on the Three Amigos show, and I'm pushing, really hoping that they're going to bring another striker in, but. When you think about it, they've got Joe Linton, who they spent 40 million on. They're still going to go with him. Andy Carroll, obviously, if they can keep him fit, is still there. He's got another year, to go at the club. Dwight Gale will come back from injury. It's another striker. And you've got Callum Wilson. Mike Ashley might, turn around and say, we've got 4 strikers, and when they're all fit, they can all compete against each other. So, will we see another, forward come in? And we don't know what the budget is. 35 million was a price which was put out there by the press, but we don't really know if that's what we had to spend. So, look, it's interesting. It's interesting to see, what we've got, at the end of the transfer window. Only then can we judge what the season's going to be like, I think. And by then we'll have played a few more games as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that we should pick off a striker from Liverpool now that Liverpool has signed Jota. Maybe Brewster or Origi would be available for us. I know that there's a lot of competition for both of those, but maybe
Malcolm Taylor says we certainly have more versatility now as a squad, so certain players will get used in different games to do certain roles. That's right. I mean, Manquillo played right back the other day against West Ham, and then dropped into left back against Blackburn in the Cup. So there is a little bit more versatility in the squad. Spenny, your take on the week. Are you happy, mate? Are you happy with with the way that we've started the season?
Well, yes, because we won 2 games. But for me, tomorrow's team, I would have Gillespie in instead of Dalot. I think I'm more confident in Gillespie than as Dalot as a goalkeeper. Looking at him on Tuesday, and the lads were on about last night as well. I thought he's more confident coming over in the crosses, catching balls. and that sort of thing. And I would take Hayden off because his discipline went the last game a bit, and he got a yellow card and that sort of thing. His tackles were firing in. And I'll put Hendricks in the middle, and I'll put Fraser on the right. That's where I will play tomorrow.
Okay, mate. Okay, well, we can talk in depth tomorrow when we do the live about the Brighton game. Lots of comments coming in. Thanks for all your comments. Please hit the thumb and give the video a like. Ginger Hoskins says, when Dubravka's back, we'll be more solid, but Chambers, who can play right back and centre half, would be good. And Origi. I mean, yeah, would love to have those kind of players. We're forgetting about Dubravka as well. It's weird. Football's like that. You know, we're all talking about who's the better keeper, Darlow or Gillespie, as if that's going to be the decision for the season. But our best keeper's injured. And you know, at the start of the season, we were all talking about how vital it was going to be, you know, to get Dubravka back quickly because he was our key player last year. Andre, happy with the week so far, mate?
Yeah, actually, I saw the Blackburn game on a crappy stream here in Bulgaria, and what I noticed is that Fraser really lost stamina after the 35th minute. Like, he was great for the first 35 minutes, but he could barely walk towards the end of the first half. I don't think Fraser is ready to start a game in the next couple of weeks, not at least in the league. I think he'll be given a chance against Morecambe next week, but gradually he has to build his stamina because he hasn't played a game since March, and you could tell this on Tuesday night. One other thing is that I've noticed that Steve Bruce, when he wins a game, he doesn't change things. Like, he's a very conservative type of manager. He really reshuffles when he loses. You remember the 5-0 against Leicester, how he changed everything for the Man U home game. But when he wins, he doesn't touch the starting 11. So I don't expect any changes in the starting 11 tomorrow. I think that the big question for him, and he kind of admitted this in the press conference yesterday, is dropping Almiron, because I think he wants to play Almiron, but at the same time he cannot drop anyone from the West Ham game. And Almiron really had a good game against West Ham. You know, I was thinking when he came on in the 80th minute, like, I don't want to be a defender and to see Almiron coming on the 81st minute. You know, probably the best stamina in the Premier League and one of the fastest players coming for like 10 minutes. But let's see. And another thing, you know, I'm thinking about Brighton is that they're really kind of a bogey team for Newcastle in the past 3 years, because like we don't have a go at St. James's Park against them. I think that this is kind of karma coming back after this Modiame goal in the Championship. And basically, we hadn't scored against them for 3 years at St. James's. We haven't won against them for 3 years in the Premier League. And I was very impressed by Brighton in their game against Chelsea. Like, they play possession football. They have some very, very good players. And I think this guy on the right there, Tariq Lamptey, is one of the best right wing backs in the Premier League. So Jamal Lewis is in for a very tough game tomorrow. So all we know, we shouldn't underestimate Brighton. And I think that it's going to be a very, very even game.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Great stuff. John Askew, thanks for becoming a member. If you want to become a member and donate a little bit towards the channel, just click join. $1.99 is what it costs, and get a nice little emoji and stuff like that. But thanks very much for any donations. Great. Gary, thanks as well, mate. It's always good to hear where people are from. Watching from Australia, great comments. It's always nice, and I know the lads appreciate it when we get those kind of compliments. So thanks very much. Daz, last but not least, before we finish off today, so you can all go off and watch Soccer Saturday or watch all your legal streams that you've got. Give us your view on the last 7 days at Newcastle United.
Yeah, no, happy with the week, Steve. 2 wins. Didn't get to see the Blackburn game, so that's why I'm positive still. So yeah, and I think going into this week, I'd be happy at the end of this week with another 2 wins. We're still in the cup and 6 points in the league, as they predicted after the 3 games. But then I think for tomorrow's game, I wouldn't change it. I stick with the personnel and go with 4-4-2 again. But Brighton will play 5-3-2. The key battle for me, and the first name on the sheet tomorrow, is Andy Carroll. He's going to be important on both ends of the pitch. The Geordie Jesus needs to stay on the pitch and not get sent off in the first couple of seconds like he tried the last day. But yeah, no, that's the key for me. I think the battle between Carroll and Dunk will be something to watch tomorrow. And yeah, I'm going for the win.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I'm a lot more optimistic since I started working on this show with you, Daz, because your enthusiasm, you're one of those supporters who, like, the glass is never half full, it's always full to the brim and overflowing. Maybe that's the Irish in you, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the English.
It's just on this show. My wife would disagree with everything else.
Lads, thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on at short notice. I've got a hot footed now to go and see Dunstan before fans get banned from non-league games again. So thanks for coming on. Look forward to having you all on tomorrow. It's a 1 o'clock start, so I appreciate some of you might have to set your alarm a little bit earlier. But we'll be doing Brighton live tomorrow. Just us all chatting about the game. So hope everybody can enjoy that tomorrow. But thanks a lot, lads. Take care. See you later.
How are you, lads?
Yeah, guys.
Take care.